Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, and talofa lava and kia ora tātou katoa to members of this House. The member who just spoke said that she was concerned, and she's right to be concerned, sir. I have here over 100 copies of emails that have come to me from Aucklanders expressing their outrage about a particular amendment in this bill. And many of those people who have sent emails, sir, are from Aucklanders, and I'd say that at the very top of sent to is the name of that particular member. And so she needs to be concerned, but the big question that people from the Auckland region will be asking her is what will she do about the particular amendment of which people are concerned. Labour voted in favour of this bill, Mr. Speaker, during its first reading. And the reason why was that the bill could advance to select committee process and thus provide the public with the opportunity to participate by way of public submissions they could make. Now, National rushed through the first reading of this bill, Mr. Speaker. Opposition members had fewer than 24 hours to consider the detail of this bill at first reading, so it was important that public consultation takes place, and it was important that opposition MPs be given the opportunity to more fully consider the potential merits or otherwise of a large number of proposed amendments as outlined then by the Minister, the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith. Labour expressed some real concerns about the detail of a number of those provisions. We also expressed our willingness to work constructively with the government to improve the operation and performance of the Resource Management Act, provided that the proposed changes did not undermine environmental protection and did not undermine public participation. Labour extends our sincere appreciation to those who took the time to give evidence to this important work. The bill attracted over 840 submissions and heard directly from about 339 submitters. Other submitters were heard via teleconference. And while there was support from obvious quarters for the government's proposed amendments, the bill did receive significant criticism at Select Committee for poor drafting and introducing unnecessary amendments which were described by submitters as confusing and too complex. I, like other MPs in this House, continue to receive emails from individuals, community groups and small businesses outlining their strong opposition to particular amendments to the Resource Management Act Streamlining Bill by this government. And later I will share with the House some of feedback. The Resource Management Act is a balanced piece of legislation which provides for sustainable development, local participation in decision-making and protection for the natural and physical environment. Labour is generally supportive of ongoing moves to improve the operation and performance of the RMA. Labour will support measures that reduce unnecessary costs and delays and objections motivated by trade competition. The bill has undergone significant changes during the committee stage, highlighting the haste with which the government put together the changes to this significant bill. While Labour supports improvements to the bill, it does not support proposals that will rebalance the RMA in favour of development at the expense of environmental protection and public participation in decision-making. Labour believes strongly that we should not allow New Zealand's environment to be degraded. While we support streamlining the consent process, we do not support removing the safeguards for protecting the environment. New Zealanders are rightly proud of our clean, green brand, and there are strong views in the community that the government cannot simply be allowed to ram through its pet projects without adequate public input and scrutiny. One of the principles that undergird the Resource Management Act is the principle of community participation. The RMA is about making sure that development is enabled, but that there is collective responsibility for the management and development of valuable natural resources and our beautiful environment. The RMA permits this by allowing for communities and individuals to get their chance to have their say in the development of their local areas. It is important to ensure that communities and people that are adversely affected should be able to have their say. In fact, the Minister said during the first reading of the bill, and I quote, "No changes are proposed to the purposes or principles of the Resource Management Act." And he goes on, "I believe that those principles are sound." Labor agrees that the principles of the RMA are sound. However, we believe that there are three key areas which, if the government were to go ahead with, would undermine these sound principles and ultimately undermine the democratic rights of local communities and their rights to participate in the local decision-making and the need to protect our environment for the benefit not only of present generations but future generations. Labor does not support the changes to the way resource consents are notified. Labor does not support the removal of the Minister of Conservation's decision-making powers in relation to restricted coastal activities. Labor does not support the prohibition of district rules that allow local authorities to have general tree protection rules in their district plans. Labor is concerned that the removal of the presumption in favour of notification will undermine public participation and the ability of local communities to be involved in decisions that affect their community. The bill raises the threshold of affected parties to narrow the scope of parties that need to be notified, and it raises the threshold for effects on the environment before a local authority needs to notify an application. The committee received about 395 submissions on this proposal, and 75% strongly opposed the change. The main concern of submitters was that the changes would reduce public participation. The removal of the Minister of Conservation's decision-making powers in respect of coastal consent for restricted coastal activities will lessen the environmental protection of the coastal area under the RMA. The Minister of Conservation decision-making powers allow the Minister to advocate for the public interest on proposed coastal developments. These powers provide an important environmental check on proposed coastal developments. 83% of submitters on this amendment were strongly opposing it. Labor does not support the prohibition of district rules that allow for the general protection of trees. This proposal undermines local decision-making powers and the ability of communities to determine development in their area. Local authorities should be left through their elected representatives to make their own decisions about the protection of trees in their communities. I want to reflect to you, Mr. Speaker, and to members of this House, some of the concerns that have been shared with myself, and I suspect with many other members of this House. I have here from Amanda of Auckland, and she says, standing up to those who think they are king. She expresses her concern and asks that clause 52 be deleted, and she says, we need to retain the existing tree protection provisions and seek to meaningfully engage with local communities in respect of any modifications of existing tree protection rules. I have here from Tony, from Piha, who says that he lives overlooking the valley at all the old pohutakawa that line the hills. Every tree that I can see from here is on private land, and if clause 52 of the proposed Resource Management Simplifying Amendment Bill goes through, they are all at risk. Tony's request is simple. Please delete the clause and talk to the communities about what level of protection they would like to see. I have here from a Dr. Andrew of Mairangi Bay, who says, I request that you seek the deletion of clause 52, retain the existing tree protection provisions and meaningfully engage with local communities in respect to any modifications of existing tree protection rules. I have one here from Wendy of Auckland, who says, trees are an important part of the landscape and provide oxygen to the environment and hold the surrounding land together more than we might think. The loss of large historic trees from my neighbourhood would be devastating for me as well as the bird life that live in them. Please reconsider the above clause. And there are many, many more, sir, that I have, as I've
I
said
regret
to
to
you,
advise
about
the member
100
that his
more,
time has expired.
all from Aucklanders.